Welcome back, or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Lassini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and to explain strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode number 40. My guest is Dr. Cristina Versari, one of the best sports psychologists in the world today. Dr. Versari served as the former program administrator for the MBA Education and Career Development Program. Her expertise lies in career transition, life planning, and use of assessment to provide a holistic approach to performance enhancement. Dr. Versari is the director of Sports Psychology Program at the San Diego University for Integrative Studies, SDUIS. Dr. Versari has worked with high-profile clientele for over 30 years, including the Brazilian Olympic men's national basketball team, and continues to provide services to elite professional athletes and teams. She played an integral role in my own performance enhancement over the past 2 seasons, with the latest resulting in a Premier Lacrosse League championship. I can speak candidly to her professionalism, knowledge, commitment, empathy, and remarkable ability to derive results. It's an honor to have her as a mentor, and I'm extremely excited to have her here as we build off episode number 12. If you haven't listened to that, perhaps pause this and go check that one out for Dr. Versari's first appearance on this podcast. So without further ado, Dr. Versari, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me, and congratulations for your success in lacrosse, and congratulations for the success of your podcast.
Thank you. I just want to start with us reemphasizing some of the main topics we covered the first time. For those who didn't get a chance to listen to it, I want to use the rest of our time to adventure into new questions and topics, but the first several will be just a reemphasis. So one of the main separating factors of your work is the integrative approach. In episode number 12, you talked about the importance of alignment between the work we do in life and the goals we set and the values we have. You even said if they're aligned, you just can't wait to get to work. So why is it so important not to attempt to separate the individual? And why is it so important to understand the integrative approach?
Over the years, working with elite athletes, including Olympic athletes, I've always asked them a question. What was going on around you in your life at the time when you won the gold medal, or you won the championship, or you had the best results in your athletic career? And every one of them answered the questions the same way. Everything in their lives was aligned. Their relationships, their spirituality, their relationship with God, their coaches, their training, their physical performance, their physical body, their health, everything was aligned. So there is a relationship, everything is related. And when there's balance between all the areas of our lives, we're available and willing to perform our best. We get the best results when we allow our minds and our bodies to be integrated.
One of the things that I find so fascinating is when it comes to mental performance training, one of the ethos is controlling the controllables and focusing on what you're in control of. And then something that we talked about in episode number 12, and just like you mentioned right there, is the power of relationships and the support system. And we have no control over that. So here's a top factor in performance, yet we have no control over those relationships outside of ourselves. So how does one handle the fact that relationships being such a top factor for long-term success, yet they must focus only on their controllables?
As you said, relationship is one area of our life that we have no control over. You can control your training, you can control your nutrition, you can control a lot of other aspects of your life that relates to your performance, but you have no control over relationship because there's someone else there. So what I recommend is that you learn more about yourself. The more we know about ourselves, the more and the better we can communicate to others in terms of our needs. And we can narrow down what is it that we're looking for in a relationship. And we can start a relationship with someone that we already know in advance that we have a chance of succeeding. When as you know, I do a lot of work on personality profile, and there's science behind that says that certain personalities tend to do better and be a better match, a better fit with certain personalities. So that's one thing that people can use. Find out what's your personality preference. And based on that, what would be the ideal match for you? So use as much information that's available out there in terms of relationships and your own preference, and what would be the ideal situation, and try to avoid situations that would not help you and would create conflict. So the idea is to avoid conflict and anything that would disrupt your training, your concentration, your ability to focus on your performance in your career. So people need to learn more about themselves and make a list of what is it that you don't want in a relationship. Not only what you want, but what are the things that you do not want. So if you don't do very well with people that have certain qualities or certain behaviors, avoid that. And I think the other thing is to look into the past experience. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So look at your history and what were the situations that did not work for you, and try to avoid that in the future, because there's a good chance that you're going to be facing the same problems if you're going to be involved with someone that has the same type of behavior.
The idea that comes to mind is from Carl Jung, and how he talks about what you need most is where you least want to look. And that's why I think about that, because as you come to understand yourself and clean out your own closet, if you will, you start to understand the qualities and weaknesses and yourself a lot more. I've learned that from you, routinely auditing your greatest assets, your areas of improvement, focusing on yourself in the mirror. When did you come to understand the impact of personality and innate tendencies in all that you do?
Very early in my career, I met an expert on the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and she became my trainer. And I've learned so much from her. And when I started working with the NBA players, the work was very much based on that foundation, because we were focusing on second career planning. Mm-hmm. And people, based on their preference, tend to choose certain careers. So you can take the test and find out what are your preferences, what are the careers that you would do well. If you are an introvert person, you don't want to be in a career that requires you to be interacting with people all the time. That makes you not like your job. So you put yourself in a situation that you have the choice to work alone or with less contact with people. So those are very predictable outcomes if you put yourself in a certain situation. So it's the same thing in terms of relationships. And I also apply that knowledge to performance enhancement and team building. Communication between players and coaches based on personality type. How can you improve your communication? How can you improve your communication with yourself and the people around you to improve not only your performance, but the team performance? So I have been using this knowledge base and this science for about 30 years now.
Wow. And, one of the things we talked about the first time I had you on was the modalities of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and the importance of hitting every single type. And I guess the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because you said that this should be taught early on, right around first grade. And why do you think it's not? Why do you believe that personality and visual, auditory, kinesthetic, why sort of things is it take maybe to the back end, or it's not even taught, whether in upbringing of school?
I ask myself the same question, and I do not know the answer. I think educators have some knowledge of that, and I do not know why they don't use for teaching. It's so critical, especially in education, because if you are a teacher, if you are a coach, if you're an instructor, and you're a visual person, you're going to teach using your preferred modalities of communication. You're going to communicate with the people that you're teaching in a visual mode. If the person is kinesthetic or auditory, they will not learn as well as they could because you're not reaching them. So teachers and coaches and even parents, you have to use all three. When you use all three, you are reaching and you're communicating effectively with all types. So this is critical communication in terms of communication skills. Mm-hmm. And also in relationships, because when we meet someone, in the beginning, people tend to do all three. People do things that are visual, things that are kinesthetic, things that are auditory. And over time, we stop and we just do the things that we prefer most of the time. So when that happens, we stop reaching the other person and we're not as effective in communicating with them.
I think this word communication continues to ripple in the last few questions and answers. And when I asked for your final thought on the first episode together, you talked about the power of the spoken word. And you said, whatever you focus on becomes your reality. We must focus and control what we tell ourselves. Why is it a bigger problem than most people think when they put themselves down verbally?
Whatever the most important thing is how we communicate with ourselves. Number one, how, the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our communication with ourselves and others. So number one, how we communicate with ourselves. What we tell ourselves is going to prepare us to take certain actions or not take certain actions. So we're constantly asking ourselves questions and telling ourselves messages that will impact our behavior every moment of our days. So the communication with ourselves is very powerful. And when we say something negative, that probably is going to influence our actions and limit us from taking certain actions that would be leading to certain results. So we have to fight negative thoughts. We have to communicate with ourselves in a way that tells our brain what is it that we're trying to accomplish and not what you're not trying to do. If we say, don't think about the color blue, your brain already did. So you can't say that. You have to say, think about the color pink. Say what you want the brain to see, visualize, and act based on that. So the communication has to be positive. It has to be giving the message to our brain about what we want to see happen.
Talking about this journey from limiting to unlocking potential, the most important takeaway I've had and learning from you is the power of internal belief system, how it drives or impedes action. Nevertheless, it can be a touchy subject because it's such a deep feeling for many people. So how would you recommend to a listener who does want to speak to themselves better or empower themselves, how would you recommend he or she work on their belief system?
The belief system is very important. Our values and beliefs are going to determine whether we do something or not. And we need to understand that you cannot argue with people in areas that have to do with beliefs. So whether you believe that you can accomplish something or you believe you can't, you're right. So people's beliefs are not going to change unless they recognize that that's limiting their actions and they want to change. And beliefs are not static. We can change beliefs. Sometimes we grow up in a family or in a culture that tell us certain things and we believe that throughout our lives. And as an adult, when we're no longer part of their group, we it's important to recognize what are the beliefs that no longer support us and are not helping us to move in the direction of our goals, and change those beliefs. So beliefs can change, can be changed. We have the power to do that. And beliefs are nothing but a strong feeling of certainty about what something means. So we have to identify what are the beliefs that we have that are limiting our actions and they're preventing us from accomplishing our goals, and change the feelings that we have about that and create new beliefs. So there's exercise, there's a process that we go through to facilitate that, and it works every time. So it's part of this is neuro-linguistic programming that I use.
I would say one of the most serendipitous or fascinating things is when we were going through that exercise for me personally, at the same time, I was reading the book, The Alchemist. And one of the lines that gets repeated so much in it is, when you want something bad enough, the whole world conspires to help you achieve it. And that's very that's a faith, that's a deep belief that you must have. And I guess the optimistic perspective is that it's not static and that it can change and you're not stuck where you are. And I think that's really powerful. Talking about our mutual admiration for Jim Rome, right? And he talks about, for things to change, we have to change. Maybe this is not necessarily the optimistic part, but something I've also learned from you is that pain is leverage. Do you mind sharing what that means and perhaps why pain is a factor in everything that we're talking about?
I think pain is the number one motivator. You've probably heard stories of people that used to smoke and tried to stop and had a lot of excuses and ideas why they didn't need to stop or they couldn't stop. But one day they go to the doctor and the doctor shows them an x-ray and shows their lungs and let them know that, if you don't stop smoking, you probably will not survive within, a year from now. And at that moment, that pain is great enough to motivate the person to stop. And some people, they'll stop that day at that moment and they will not smoke again. Why is it that they didn't do before? Because they associate more pleasure to smoking than pain. So pain is a great motivator. We will do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So that can be used, we can all use that to improve performance and to change behaviors that we want to change. And do that by visualize what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if you continue to engage in this behavior and if you do not change. We can just do that easily anytime that you're trying to change a behavior, but it's easier not to. So just visualize your future, what's going to happen before it happens. And sometimes it's enough motivation and build the leverage that people need to change behavior.
Yeah, I've had it said to me in different ways, and from Doc Gilbert, he says, I guess the pain of loss is greater than the opportunity of gain. And he talks about that with a student. Why do they cram the night before? Is it to get an A or to not get an F? And it's usually to not get an F. And I think that's amazing how we're activated through that pain. And I bring it up. It's obviously not a feel-good conversation, but it's the truth. And I think that's important to bring that out of the fog and say the power of negative visualization and saying, this is how bad it could be, right? So we talk about action, but inaction could be really, really costly. One of the other things that you brought up in our first time together was the power of role models. When I asked you, what do you know now that you wish you knew years and years ago? Something that you mentioned was that you wish you had more teachers close the gap by sharing their experience, so that rather than you having to live and learn through major problems, obstacles, and events yourself. What would you say to reemphasize why models, mentors, coaches are so important in your opinion?
They have the recipe to success. Anytime that I was trying to accomplish something in my life and it was something new, I looked for someone that had already accomplished that. And I have multiple mentors that helped me throughout my career because they had already done what I was trying to do, and they had the recipe to success. So look at people that are successful, and you can have multiple role models, you can have multiple mentors. Find someone that's doing something that you want to accomplish. If you want to improve your performance by a certain level, find somebody that has already done that and ask them, how do you do that? They'll be happy to share that with you. Most successful people are happy to share their recipe to success. And they will tell you exactly, this is how you do it. Step 1, 2, 3. So they have the steps, they tell you how to do it. And if you do exactly what they say, you will get the same results. If you wanted to write a book, ask someone that has written a book, and how did you do that? I have asked that to different people, and they tell you exactly how they did it. Some are people that never thought they could write a book in their lives, and they came up with a system. They wake up at 5 a.m. every day. They do this when they wake up, and they start writing for so many hours, and then they take a break, and then they work out. They have a system, and they don't stop until it's done. Mm-hmm. So, it's different for everybody. Some people find it easier to write a book. For some people, it's a very difficult process, but they all get it done. So find different role models, ask them, how do you do this? And they'll tell you exactly, step by step. If you follow those steps, you will get the same results.
I think there's a downside to it too, because I've come across maybe bad coaches or heard stories of bad coaches, and they something you've said in the first episode is that gravity is automatic, right? And I think there's something to be said inside of that. I was having dinner with my 95 and 92-year-old grandparents, and they shared this line that was really powerful to me. And they said, it takes 10 attaboys to make up for one mean comment. And you talked about in the first episode, your mom saying that you could do anything. And perhaps this taps into belief too, but I think it'd be a great question to ask you. What advice would you give to a young parent or young teacher who's listening into this, looking to have a major impact on their kids or students?
Focus on the positive. We can see there's good and bad about everything in life. There's good and bad about everybody. Focus on the positive. Bring up the qualities that people have. Most people don't get enough feedback. They don't know a lot about themselves based on how other people see them. Give them feedback. Emphasize the qualities that they have. You are so smart. You just said this. Oh, you're so intelligent. I'm so impressed with what you did. You did a wonderful job. Look at this, and show why you're saying that. Give them the example of why you're saying that. And that helps young people and even adults to build more confidence in themselves. I think most of us build confidence based on work, either athletic performance, academic work, career, and that's how we build confidence, is by the results that we get. And people can point that out, when a child is in development, all the positive things that they're capable of doing. Look, you did a great job doing this, and highlight for them. And that helps them to build confidence in themselves and have to develop their self-esteem, have a strong self-esteem.
I think this is echoed in books that I've read, whether it's The 1 Minute Manager or How to Win Friends and Influence People. The idea is to catch people doing something right and encourage them, especially the young kid who, if you just watch a kid playing with a toy and you pay attention to them and they see you're paying attention to them, it's like it livens them up. And I think it doesn't change as you get older. And feedback from the right person that individual trusts, I mean, that can really set an upward trajectory. And I've felt it firsthand from you and from others. And now building upon to new territory, we talk about focus and we talk about communication. And these things are basic, yet it's not necessarily something that's done habitually and in the right manner. I guess this is more of a broad stroke question. but our admiration for sports psychology and care about it and wanting it to be more widely known. Could you shed light on why you believe so much in the power of sports psychology and why sports psychology could have such a major influence?
I think I saw, and I have a degree in physical education, and I've been involved with athletes most of my life. I was a swimmer myself, and I noticed that there's talent. There's the talent development, that the coach can bring that out and make it stronger and more visible. And then there's the person's internal conversation with themselves that could just disregard everything else. So they can have natural talent, you can help develop the talent, but if they don't believe themselves, they will not perform their best. And I follow a lot of judo athletes early in my career, and I would see some of them, they're very young, they had such a talent, but they couldn't perform. So they're like the champions during practice. They're practice champions. And during tournaments, they couldn't perform. And I started wondering, and I discovered one of my teachers told me about sports psychology, and I became very interested. So I started learning about sports psychology, then got my doctorate degree in sports psychology, because I believe that we can help those individuals to perform their best at the time when it really matters. It's not doing practice only. So what do you need to do to overcome your anxieties and fears and negative thoughts at the time when it matters? And I find that fascinating, because you can see people that are so successful, that they have incredible abilities, they can't perform their best at the time when it matters. Mm-hmm. So, and I think this can be translated and transferred to other fields, mm-hmm. in education and in corporation work. So this can be applied to a lot of different areas, not just sports. It's performance enhancement. What can be done to help perform your best? That you have the ability to do that. Why aren't you doing it? Mm. And the difference between an average performer and a better performer is very small. So when it comes to performance enhancement, it's a very small change that can lead to huge results. So the difference, I think we talked about that in the first episode, the difference between the gold medal and the silver medal is very small. Mm. They're all at the same level. They all made it to that level, not by accident. So they're all able to get the gold medal. So the difference is very small. Mm. So you can help athletes and individuals and professionals and students to perform better by making some small changes. Mm. And that could be time management, just helping manage their times better so they have more time in the day to do the things they need to do. It could be goal setting. I think most people don't write their goals down. They think about it, say, yeah, this is my goal. On January 1st, people say, this is my list of my goals. They just say it. They don't write it down. If you make a list of your goals, that's a wish list. You have to have an action plan to go with that. What are your goals? What are the actions you're going to take? And take those actions and update that on a daily basis from one week to the next. Take those steps, because that's what's going to lead to accomplishing the goals. So those are small things that people can do that can change their lives. They can change the results that they get drastically. Mm. And I love this kind of work. I think if you can help people to be the best they can be in whatever they're doing, it's a positive psychology. It's the positive aspect, of behavior change.
I'm going to pull on the thread a little bit, just because I think we're going into a really important area or a topic inside of sports psychology. A tangent real quick would be, read the book Sermon on the Mount, which obviously has a spiritual and religious ethos to it, right? But conceptually, it makes a lot of sense for someone looking to better their lives. It has this idea that you need to do two things. You need to aim for your highest conceptual good, whatever that might be, whatever identity you want to live into, and focus on the day, right? So there's this kind of idea of going uphill and carrying something that matters to you and makes your life worthwhile. Yes, it'll be hard, but it'll always be worthwhile. So the question I have for you is, when you look around and you brought up the January 1, right, New Year's resolution, usually there's a lot about going to the gym inside of that, like the physical exercise aspect, right? But I still feel as if the mind and the spirit are not trained enough. And maybe it's because people don't know how to do that, or perhaps it's because the field is so misunderstood, right? Sports psychology, maybe it's underutilized, maybe it's understood. For a listener, how would they go about training their mind or training their spirit, right? If there is uncertainty there, what suggestions would you have for them to get started?
I love this question because I had the same question for many, many years. I would go to the gym and see people that are there. I talk to the trainer and say, what time do you open? And I say 5 a.m. What time do you have people start coming here? And they said 5 a.m. There's a group of people that are at the door before we open every single day at 5 a.m. They're waiting for us to open. Doesn't matter if it's cold, if it's warm, if it's raining, they're here every day. And I said, how many people pay for membership and never show up? And they would tell me this number. It's a huge number. And I've always had this question for myself. I said, what's the difference between the people that show up at 5 a.m. every single day, 7 days a week, no matter what, and the people that pay for the membership and never show up? They don't go once. So they had the same intent. They had the same goal. They would like to exercise for some reason, but one followed through consistently and they get the results, and the others never did. So what's the difference? So I did a research with my students. We went and we had questionnaires and we interviewed the members of a fitness club in San Diego. It's a very nice, very professional club. And the results were very interesting because first of all, what's the reason why people want to work out? My impression was that it was for their appearance, to look better, to look in shape. But the results that we got from our interviews and our questionnaires was that the number one was health. Health reason was number one. The appearance was second. So what the conclusion that we came up from this was that values and beliefs impact whether people are going to follow through with that plan or not. It's their values and their beliefs. So if you believe that it's important to work out for whatever reasons you have, in this group there was health. Your health is important enough. You will show up at 5 a.m. every day, 7 days a week. If you don't believe that exercise is going to bring the results, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, you will not even go there. The other one is pain and pleasure that we just talked about. So there's a group of people, they associate more pleasure to working out than pain. And our brain will do whatever it takes to avoid pain. But pain is a great motivator. So probably people that come to the gym at 5 a.m. every day, they had a medical condition. They may still have a medical problem, that they associate more pain to not going to the gym than going to the gym. So that's more pleasurable for them to show up no matter what and be healthy. The health is very important to them. So pain and pleasure, what people associate pain and pleasure to, for some people working out is not pleasurable and they'll do whatever it takes to avoid that. And values and beliefs. Whatever we believe that's important to us, we're going to take actions based on that. So whether you believe that working out is important or not, you're right. And that will lead to the behavior that follows.
Amazing answer. Thank you. And I think I want to get to consistency, and we're going to come to that on the next question. I would also add this idea that it's easier to do something every day than every once in a while, right? Because we are habitual and routine in a lot of ways as human beings. So setting the first step and the second step and creating a new habit is really powerful. I would like for you, Dr. Versari, for a listener who goes, okay, this is the second time you brought up values and beliefs being so important. For someone listening in that says, okay, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to audit and look at and empower myself through values and beliefs. What would you say? Where should they get started on taking a look at that, so that we're not only talking about what it is, value and beliefs, but how do they do that, being that actions are so necessary?
The first thing, make a list of 3 limiting beliefs that you have that are preventing you from taking action towards your goals. And then look at those beliefs and decide that you're going to change. And then make a list of 3 new beliefs that you're going to have, and that those are the beliefs that are going to come to mind every time when you think about taking certain actions that have been difficult for you. And we do a visualization exercise following that. If you want to, if anybody's very interested, they feel free to contact me after the podcast. I'll be happy to help anybody that might be interested in that. But when you do a visualization, think about the negative consequence of continuing to live your life with those negative beliefs, and then see yourself in the future, 5, 10, 15 years from now, living your life with new beliefs, and the difference that will make, not only for yourself and the impact that it will have in your life, but in the lives of the people that you love, your family, your friends, co-workers, and everybody else that's involved. Because the negative behavior and negative consequence of certain behaviors, that doesn't impact just us. It impacts everybody else in our lives. And sometimes we'll do more for others than we'll do for ourselves. So if we're not motivated enough to make a change for ourselves, think about the people in our lives. What's the impact that it will have in their lives if we create certain changes.
And it's going to be far better. I could speak to firsthand experience. When looking at those limiting beliefs, I think it's important to ask yourself if there's some coach or parent who've said something about that you've come to believe, if there's something you get on yourself about verbally, whether it's that you're always late or you're too messy. Think about what that might lead to if you continue to have those limiting beliefs. From a negative visualization perspective, you'll create the pain that hasn't happened yet and be able to revitalize. Dr. Versari, a word that I learned from you is congruence. And you've said to me, consistency plus continuity equals results. And could you just elaborate on why living a congruent life is so essential to high performance?
Being congruent is to say what you think and do what you say. A lot of times people don't say what they think, and as a result, they don't do what they say because they don't believe in that. So congruency comes from saying what you think, doing what you say. And you become also a very reliable person because people can count on you. They know you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and they can depend on that. And people like that. People want to be in a relationship with somebody that's consistent, that's congruent, they know what they want, do what they say. Consistency and continuity are important, just like working out. You can't just go to the gym once a week and build muscles. It's not going to happen. You have to build muscles by following a certain schedule of so many times a week, an hour a day, so many repetitions. There's a system for that. It doesn't happen by you thinking about it. You have to do it, and you have to have a routine, you have to have a schedule, and you'll see the results within a certain time frame. You always see the results if you do those things. So it's the same with your mind. You can't build certain qualities and certain positive thoughts and beliefs and values by just saying you're going to do it. There has to be a consistency and continuity in the behavior. It's consistency and continuity in how you think. And you can build the muscles of your mind that way, but it has to be consistent. Consistency and continuity are critical for someone to get results.
I love it.
It's also very important in many other areas like coaching. You had a coach that was consistent and provided continuity, and that had an incredible impact in your life as an athlete. So when you talk about your coaches and you talk about your experience in lacrosse, you can see the consistency and continuity was there. Also, regarding your father and the effort that he consistently put into training you and making time for you. It wasn't once in a while. It was consistent, was every day. And you still talk about it. So it had such a great impact in your life that you remember and you talk about it today, and you can track back how that impacts your performance and your development as an athlete. So those are examples, and everybody can think about an example in their own lives. There's something that happened, a parent or a coach or a teacher that consistently did something, and now you can see the impact that they had in your life. So if we do that ourselves, you will get the results that you want. Our brain loves routine. The human brain loves routine. So create a routine that's going to lead to the results that you want. Set up a time frame by when you expect those results and do it. Consistency and continuity. This is also important in raising children. Children will do well if they have consistency and continuity in their environment, even if the environment is not very positive, as opposed to children that had unexpected circumstances in their environment on a consistent basis. They never knew what was going to happen. Even if their environment was more positive, they don't do as well as the children that had consistency and continuity. Children need to know that they're loved and have consistency and continuity in their lives, and that will lead to better adults.
I completely agree. I would even point to my mother and my sister and having that kind of certainty. I've been extremely lucky in having love surrounding me during my upbringing. I know you did too. They were also morally sound, and very, very grateful for the coaches and mentors like yourself who have been reliable and constant. And I think that's something I've shared with you on the outside of this podcast is when you've asked me what I need, it's I just need that constancy of it. Right. And I think one of the things I want to bring up is we're really hammering home the mind and the spirit. So I think people have a lot more clarity than they did 45 minutes ago on how to train it and how to look at it and how to audit it, how to reflect and then empower from it. Things like visualization, self-talk, values, beliefs, goals. What's fascinating in your integrative approach and SDUIS is it's mind, body, and spirit. I want you to speak a little bit about your sports psychology program incorporating a nutrition course. Why? What does that have to do with mind and behavior?
All areas of our lives have to be in balance for us to perform our best. And like I mentioned earlier, every time I interview an athlete and ask them, they didn't say my training was perfect and my the results I get in terms of my physiology was great. They always mention all areas of their lives. So I start looking into that. And so the spirituality is very important. They always say I was in peace with God. That's very powerful. that I didn't hear this from one person. I heard this from multiple people. So their physical body and the nutrition is very important. Our school has, I believe, the only nutrition class in a sports psychology program. This is also because of my experience. I was working with an athlete one time who was highly motivated, was getting results, and told me that he didn't feel motivated. And we explored everything. There was nothing that I could find that could be a problem until I asked him about what was he eating. And so, in fact, his food was what was lowering his energy level and was giving him the impression that he wasn't feeling motivated. So we changed his diet and what he was eating before the games, and that took care of it. When athletes retire, they go to a detraining process, but nobody tells them that. You have to detrain so that you can adjust to life after sports without having health problems or gaining a lot of weight or having difficulties. And the nutrition is critical because you're no longer burning that much calories. So you need to adapt. You have to modify your diet and what you're eating to adjust to that. But I've always had the belief that nutrition was critical and had a huge impact on a person's mind in terms of their performance. But I want to mention what I discovered recently since the pandemic that has really reinforced that for me. I took the opportunity of the time that I had available to change my own diet to a raw vegan diet. And I have been doing that for 2 years now. And I have experienced changes not only physically, but also psychologically that I never thought could be accomplished through a change in a diet. And I feel a calmness that I've never experienced before. And I know it can only be attributed to the change in the diet, to this raw vegan diet. So there's no processed food involved, there's no sugar, no flour. And it has changed, the change that it created for me was something that I never imagined could happen. Mm. So I know today more than ever that our nutrition has an incredible impact in our ability to think, make decisions, take actions, and accomplish anything we want to accomplish in lives in a way that I never imagined possible. So anybody that's focusing on performance enhancement in sports, career, education, any areas of your life, pay attention to your nutrition. There's a lot of documentaries that you can listen about that. There's YouTube videos. There's plenty of information out there on how to improve your performance by changing your nutrition. And I, more than ever now, I think it's critical, and I'm glad we have been emphasizing that to our students because it's really critical in terms of enhancing performance.
Something that stuck with me when you and I sat down with an Olympic athlete who won gold was the term, "my body is my business." And I really love that idea because as a pro athlete, that's definitely true, but it's also true for anyone, right? That's not a professional athlete, because you can have a billion dreams when you're healthy, but only one when you're unhealthy. And I feel as if bringing in the nutrition to this podcast was necessary, because it could even be one of the limiting beliefs someone has, right? That I will never be able to square away my nutrition. And the metaphor that's always come to mind for me is, since we're made up of primarily water, what the food we put in, the nutrition we contain, the beliefs we have, how we go about ourselves psychologically, the way you introduced the calm nature that it's brought to you. You can either have tumultuous waters internally, or you can be peaceful, right? Like a calm lake. And I think that allows for the clear mind and better decision-making and better improvement and performance enhancement on the back end. I would love to get to the last few questions here and asking you, through your experience, right? You've worked with high-profile clientele for decades. And one of the questions I want to ask you is about their problems. What are the most routine problems that you're finding inside of your high profile clientele that anyone can learn from? And that kind of the reason why I asked you is because of the point you made earlier, that these minor adjustments in your routines could have a massive difference in your results. So what are some of the most routine problems that you came across in your high profile clientele that maybe listeners can learn from?
In my experience, the number one issue that high profile athletes have is related to relationships. It's very difficult to maintain relationships when you're traveling constantly and you're focusing on your athletic performance. You have different priorities. So in my experience, the relationships has been a challenge. Also, when you become very successful in life, in any areas of your life, you become isolated. And there's very few people that you can trust. So that's another question that I've always asked the players that I've worked with. How many people do you have in your life they can trust? And they have to take a second to think about it. The answer doesn't come easily. They have to think really hard, and there's usually 2 or 3 people that they can trust because there's more money involved. There's different interests and motivation that people have to approach them. So the more successful they become, the more isolated they seem to become at the same time. Even though it appears that they have a lot of friends, they don't feel that way. And I've talked to other people, non-athletes, who are also very successful. And there's a price that you pay when you become successful. You have to give up certain areas of your life. And social life seems to be one of those, because you're so focused on results and the career that you're building, and the social life becomes more limited, and you want it to be associated with people that are getting the results that you're getting, but they bring you up. You don't want to be associated with people that are not doing well, because they'll bring you down. Like we said before, gravity is automatic. So all those factors combined create a life that's a little more isolated. And it's kind of necessary when you are very focused on getting results and you have a sense of purpose, and you delay gratification for many years to get to an Olympic medal. Imagine how many years of sacrifice you have to make for that at an early age. So you're sacrificing other areas, and you're not developing certain skills that other people, they're young, at that age would be developing. So I see that those are, the isolation. Leaders seem to intend to walk alone. You don't see a lot of people around you. In relationships, it's more difficult to build relationships.
Kind of I guess it's a 2-part question, but the first part of it would be, since it's such an expertise of yours and you've been in the arena for a very long time, in regards to career transitioning, one of the guys I deeply admire, Navy SEAL Ben Ives, said during his retirement speech, I'm not retiring, I'm refiring. And he said that in episode 6. And I really like that. However, you talked about the training process, but there's actually so much more to it. So could you shed light on perhaps the importance of transitioning well, not just for the pro athlete, but maybe the person moving on to their second or third career, the one that's moving on to another chapter of their life? Could you shed some more light on the power and the need to transition well?
Yes, the most important thing is planning and preparation. For those that are in careers, they're short careers. It's not just sports, could be military careers, dancers. There's many other careers that are short, that you can only perform and do that job at a certain age. So if you are in a career like that, planning and preparation is critical. So you start planning. When do you start planning? When you start that career. When is the basketball player or lacrosse player, when do they start planning their second career? The first day, when they start playing, start, because you don't know how long that career is going to last. It could last a few years. It could last one season if you get an injury. And that could be, a career-ending injury. So because of all the uncertainty and the factors that are involved that could end that career, you need to start planning from day one. And what is involved in the planning? Education. Solid education is very critical. Ideas about what you would be doing as a career when you're no longer playing, and a support system. It's very important to have a support system and be realistic. It's one of the factors that contributes to professional athletes is staying in the sport, is to be in denial about a second career. So they have to focus on staying, focusing on performing your best, focusing on the results for this season. Don't focus on anything else. So it's a little bit of a conflict, but use the off-season time. During the off-season, focus on planning for a second career, because it's not if it's going to come, it's when it's going to happen. We all know that. We know that now, so start planning for it. So solid education, decide what the career is going to be, support system. The other thing that happens that very few players are aware of, most players go through a period of time that they suffer from depression and anxiety. And that could take 4 to 8 years after the end of their career. A player can be very popular, have an entire support system in the league that they're playing in one day, and the next day they're isolated, completely isolated because the contract ended, or they have been cut, or they're injured, and they no longer have contact with anybody that was their lives the day before. And they're at home, sitting on their own, trying to figure out how they're going to do their lives. And because of the isolation, and they're not in contact with other retired players, they don't understand that the feelings they're having, it's normal. They're going to go through anxiety. They're going to go through depression. It's a huge loss. They spend many years building that career. And then the years that they played could be between 1 and 4 or sometimes 15, 17 years. Some careers are very long. And that is everything they have and everything that they know. So it's normal to feel the loss. And I suggest to see a therapist or a sports psychologist or a mental training coach, somebody that can help them with the process and for them to understand what part of that is normal. They're not the only ones that are feeling that way, but because they don't talk to anybody else, they don't know, and they don't get the help that they need. So they're doing the active career, athletes don't have a lot of problems. They have smaller problems, and they have an incredible support system to help them with those problems. Once the athlete retires, there's no support system, and now they have greater problems because they will, most of them, and everyone that I've known and worked with, they will experience depression and anxiety. And it takes a long time to adjust to life after sports. And it takes a very long time to find something to do that they can feel good about what they're doing. They're never going to feel as good as they felt when they were playing. There's nothing else in life that can bring those feelings, that can create those feelings. But there are some things that will create joy, and a lot of times it's involving service to others, helping others, that can create joy, and make it a pleasant second career, productive second career, enjoyable for most people. But they need to plan. The planning is critical. And how they're going to maintain their income. So to avoid the financial loss that we always hear about, so many players losing everything they have, because once they retire, they continue to spend, but there's no more money coming in. So that money is going to end at one day. So the financial planning part is also critical.
I think one of the most important things that I've learned about the entire topic is that there's basically no such thing as retirement. It's just transition, and
Transition.
it's just important to look at it that way. One of the words that you used multiple times was normal, and I like that, right? Because you brought up mental health, and I think it's so important. One of the things I wanted to ask you, speaking of service of others, you said that someone could reach out to you if somebody wants to give you feedback or they want to reach out to you. What would be the best way? I'll add it in the show notes, but what would be the best way for someone to contact you that listens to this?
They can contact me through the San Diego University for Integrative Studies email address, which is cversari@sguis.edu.
Outstanding. And I will put that in the show notes. And I guess the final way that I would love to wrap this up would be, do you have any final thoughts that you would love to add that a question I didn't ask you, or maybe something that you want to add inside the entire topic of career transition planning, sports psychology, mental health, and training mind, body, and spirit?
I think one thing that comes to mind is the topic of mental health in sports, which we are hearing more about that nowadays. And it's very important that we recognize the athletes and the athlete population is a sample of the general population. So whatever is going on within the general population, we'll see that in sports. So there's more cases of mental health problems now in the general population. Now we're seeing more of that in sports. So it's really important to understand that it's just not with athletes. We hear about athletes more, but it's happening in general with the rest of the population. We have more cases of anxiety and depression in the last 10 years than we've had in the past. There's about 50 million people suffering from anxiety and depression, and only half are getting treatment. So it's important not just to athletes to voice their concern and get help if they feel that they need the help, but also anybody from the general population. The suicide rate is high. The problem with drug and alcohol is higher than ever. So there's all those issues are happening with everyone in the general population, and it's okay for people to talk about it and seek help. There's plenty of help available everywhere in every city in the United States. There are crisis lines, there's counseling programs, there's county mental health departments. There's plenty of help available at no cost. And I would encourage anybody who feels that way, and especially because of the pandemic and the isolation that many of us have gone through, loss of income, loss of employment, so many changes that people have faced in the last 2.5 years, to seek help. And as far as the athletes, I really admire those that are coming forward and talking about their issues and normalizing the problems more for those that watch them and see them as their heroes, that no one is perfect. We all have problems. Because you're a professional athlete and you're a high performer doesn't mean that you're immune to that. We all have problems, and it's okay to talk about it and get help.
Outstanding. And I just want to reemphasize one of the quotes that you've shared with me that has been revolutionary, and that is the quality of your communication determines the quality of your life and your relationships. And I want to end there, and I want to thank you. You know, I'm extremely grateful for you, but I want to say it again that I believe you are a lead pioneer in the world of sports psychology. I'm so grateful for your mentorship, your leadership, and our relationship. So thank you so much for making the time for this.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast.